Hi, I'm Ryan Gill from Gill's Primitive Archery, and today I'm going to show you how to properly mount a stone arrowhead into the end of your arrow. What I'm working with here is all primitive stuff. I have some scraps of back sinew here, a little bit of hide glue. You can also substitute wood glue for that, and a primitive glue stick here that I've made with pine pitch. It's just daubed on the end of this stick. The pine pitch is made of pine resin, a little bit of beeswax, and wood ash. And that's actually going to glue our point on. Let me show you. This is what you do not want. This may look good to a lot of people, but what it is the shaft is straight. Does not taper at all. There's just a notch cut in the end. The point stuck in there, glued in, wrapped with sinew several times around, and this does not penetrate well. The top one is the way that I use. I barrel taper all of my shafts by hand, and then when I cut my notch in, the whole point from the very tip tapers all the way out. It's like one continuous angle, as opposed to the bottom, which is a little bit of an exaggeration, shows you what I basically just showed you here, where it's a straight shaft with a notch cut in, a point stuck in, and you can see how the transition is bad. You can obviously tell by the top picture how much better that would penetrate. So I'm going to show you today on just a stick that I've already barrel tapered with a stone point on it. This way I can maneuver it around easy for you to see. Now what we're working with here again is a barrel tapered shaft, and what I mean by barrel tapered is it's one thickness back here, but it slowly tapers towards the front. So I will scrape this down, and it takes a lot of scrapes, but this is how I barrel taper one down until it blends, basically, blends into the point with a smooth transition. And when you cut your point or your notch, it's very important that your point fit in there securely. So when you put it in with nothing in there, it's not so tight that it splits your shaft, but it needs to fit tight where you can go like this and it won't just slide out. Then I also like to mark the shaft and the point with a dot so I know which way they go. And the reason is, if you look at it that way, how nice and straight that is, if I turn this over, you can now see how crooked that is. That is bad. You do not want a point in your arrow that crooked. See, if you try and spin test that, how goofy that looks. The first step to this is to heat the shaft up just a little bit. Not very much. You don't want to burn it, but you just don't want it cold. Then we're going to heat up this pine pitch, and we're going to smear it right down in the notch. Just a little bit. It does not take a whole lot. We're just trying to get a little bit in there. It doesn't need to be so hot that it just runs in there. You just want to goop a little that goes on the inside. I'll set that somewhere where it can cool just for a second, and heat up the base of your point. Not a lot, just a little. Heat up your pitch and put a daub on the back of it on both sides. Now you're not racing against the clock here. This is a primitive heat activated glue. You can reheat it many times. There's no need to try and jam it together real quick. It's not going to stick very good if you do that. Anyway, you need to take your time with it and just reheat it after every step. We're just going to reheat both at the same time. You keep them nice and pliable. You don't want it to drip off. If it drips off, it's not doing any good. It's too loose. Line your points up and just slide it all the way in until it doesn't go in anymore. So reheat it again, just a little bit. And now look down the shaft and try and straighten it out where it needs to be straight. And then to test it, a little primitive spin test in your fingers. to ensure that the point does not wobble. And what I mean, not just the arrow point itself, but the very tip. Okay, now that we have our point glued in to the notch and it spins pretty straight, we're going to whittle this shaft down by hand. Just a little. We want a good smooth transition. You want to do that to both sides. Being careful that you don't break your point loose. If you have a good pitch, it should be able to take a little bit of abuse. Basically what you're looking for is to have no burrs or splinters or odd points, sticking up that's going to catch anything when the arrow penetrates. Reheat your point up just slightly. And this is why, right here is why it's important to make sure that your point did not wobble when you put it in without any pitch. Because every time you reheat this, it would shift on you. And because it fit tight anyway, now it won't move. When we're not reheating the entire thing, we're just trying to soften up the pitch on the outside. And then we're going to heat up the tip of your knife and use it like a trowel and smooth out this pitch. Remove anything extra in the back that you don't need. Sometimes you get the pitch that goops up along the back. You just want a nice, neat job, and you feel it gets tacky again. You just reheat the knife and smooth it out. Now, I usually take a little bit of pitch because the transition just is never perfect between the point and the shaft. And I'm going to put a drop, right there on the end where the shaft meets the point. And then again, reheat this knife up and use it like a trowel and smooth this whole thing out. When it starts feeling tacky or getting stringy, reheat it good. Smooth it out. This is the most important part of putting an arrowhead on an arrow, is the transition. And then rub your fingers over it to make sure there's nowhere that it catches. It should be a nice, smooth transition. If there's any lumps, smooth them out. If there's any spots in the wood that don't look smooth or feel smooth, go ahead and knock them down. Now let's tie on the point, and we're going to use some back sinew. I'm going to pull a piece off, get rid of all the extra stuff that's on it. We want to actually split it a few times if we can, and you want a piece that's about as thick as a thread. Very thin. You don't want a big thick piece at all. There's no need to have a big thick piece of this. What this is doing is two things. If you have notches on your arrow shaft, it's going to help keep your arrow head from falling off should it break loose, but it's also going to secure the back or the base of the notch from splitting when the arrowhead is forced into it. You don't want it to split the shaft. It takes all the energy out of it and then it doesn't do its job. It's not meant to tie the point on. That's a big misconception, that people think that you're tying the point on and that's what's making it secure. In fact, you could shoot this shaft with it. If this was an arrow, you could shoot this with this point on just like this, and providing it didn't split it, would be just fine. Right now this is secure. It doesn't move. This is just a little reinforcement on the base, and then also to keep your point from falling off. This sinew works best if you chew on it and get saliva on it. Your warm saliva actually activates the natural glue that is in the sinew. Once you get it softened up, it doesn't take long. especially with a small piece. If you really are set against chewing on it, you can soak it in warm water, which will soften it. It doesn't make it as sticky, but it will work. Now that you have it, I like to just pinch a little bit in the corner with my thumb and hold it right there, like that. Now I don't just start wrapping it around. There's no sense in building it up anywhere because you're just going to mess up that transition that you just made really smooth. So now we're going to gently pull it tight, but not so tight that it breaks it. And we're going to wrap it once around, almost in a long figure 8 fashion. Always go in a different direction, and then once around the bottom. So if you can see, I just went around once each way. So this way, I'm not mounding anything up. That'll hold your point on, should it break loose. Now you go ahead and re-wet that sinew up a little bit, and we're going to wrap this around one wrap next to another. We're not going to overlap them or bunch them up. They need to be stacked really nice next to each other. So I like to take a little bit of hide glue, or a little bit of wood glue is fine, on the end of my finger, and I smear it with the same way that I wrapped it, obviously, so it doesn't unwind your wrapping. Smear it through it. I like to put it all up on these ones. It secures them down, and also takes all the little ridges that sinew made and kind of fills them in and smooths that transition out even more. While that's drying, I'll go ahead and show you this one that I already finished. This is actually on an arrow that I'm going to use. The top one is the one that I use to hunt with. The bottom one is the example of what not to do. And you can see how this transition is very, very smooth. There's nothing for it to hang up on. So run it through your fingers again, make sure there's nowhere that it can hang up. And that is it, it's done.